Alright, so I've just realized in my other videos I didn't cover how to set up layers in Maya. So in the channels box / layer editor, at the very bottom right, we've got a little window which has got display and animation. This is where all of our layers are laid out. So if we created a little scene, so in this case, I'm going to create an example for lighting and materials. I'm going to drag out a little sphere. Boop. I'll just duplicate this ladder around. Let's try and get some depth going on. And one over here. And maybe a cube behind them. There we go. I'll just rotate that around at a jaunty angle and give it a bit of scaling. Alright, so a slightly smaller sphere. Small spheres need love too. Alright, so if we pretend this is my absolutely gorgeous, really accomplished environment. There we go. We want to make sure we're using layers to manage iterations in our design. So if we select, first we create a new layer. So this little icon, second from right, is create a new layer. Double click on a layer, we can name it. So this might be grey box blockout. So whenever I create a scene, I try to make sure I create my really simple meshes first and put them on a layout where I'm establishing all my measurements and making sure things fit together. And I'll put that on a new layer, which is just called grey box. Grey box blockout is invalid. File names only contain. Okay, so I've put a space in the name. So if I backspace and just use an underscore, there we go. Grey box blockout. But at the moment, when I click on the V for visibility to turn it on and off, nothing's happening. I need to actually assign assets to it. So if I select them all, right click the layer, add selected objects, there we go. So turning it on and off, I can turn on visibility, or in this little box on the very right hand side, I can turn it onto template mode so I can just see the wireframe, or alternatively, clicking again puts a little R in that third box, so it's a reference, so I can see it but I can't touch it. Which is really handy if you're trying to model a new version over the top. So I might create a new layer and say, I don't know, final underscore geometry, and then model even better spheres on top. Yeah, in this case, my second layer is going to be the lighting layer. So lighting underscore HDRI. So HDRI stands for high dynamic range image. So the first setup we're going to do is we're going to go along to the rendering shelf. No, we're not. We're going to keep on going to Arnold. Right, so the Arnold shelf. And we're going to click on Create Sky Dome Light. And that creates a massive sphere around our scene. If it's too small for your scene, scale it up. Way too big, scale it down a little bit. But what this is going to do is light our scene based on a HDRI image. So if we jump onto Google really quick, HDRI texture map, and we'll just quickly, this one looks pretty cool, so we'll just save that image. There we go, HDRI demo. Okay. Right, so back here with the dome selected, if I go into the attribute editor, we want to change the color by, we can either click and drag the slider, and that's going to change the intensity of the light or the intensity of the color. We could double click on it and put in a green flat color, but that would entirely defeat the purpose of this kind of method of working. We've got a dome here to try and set up a light which is going to replicate real world lighting conditions based on the color information in the map we've just downloaded. So if I click on the little black and white checker next to color, and I'm going to click on file, and I just need to tell it where I've saved my image to. So that was desktop, state modified, HDRI demo. So now our scene, we've got that texture map plopped all the way around. And if we just go back, so just click on that little box with the arrow, or we can reselect the sphere, sky dome light shape there. We want to turn off visibility in the camera to 0. So when I actually render this scene, it will not be visible. So to render my scene, if I just click on this little icon on the very top of the screen, like a director's clapper, what we should get is we've got a little bit of color information coming through here. So you can see some kind of cold blues. If I just keep this on the left hand side, I'm going to select the sphere, increase the intensity to maybe 3. And I want to be able to compare these renders. So if I click on this icon here, the image with a little green box around it, it will keep the image. So now I can scrub back and forth at the bottom of my viewport here to see images that I've kept. So see one I was playing around with earlier. So if I render again, I've increased the intensity to 3, and we can see already that the scene is a lot brighter. Right. So that's quite cool. So I'm going to keep that image as well. So the HDRI map is really cool in the respect that you get relatively realistic lights into your scene. You've got shadows being bounced around from ray casting, something we can look into in more detail later. But the downside is you don't have a lot of control over it other than through manually painting into the HDRI map or finding a different map which might better fit your needs. But because we're working for entertainment, we need to have control over how we exaggerate things. So we could start with the HDRI map. Oh, every time I have to say it, it's 11:15 at night and my mouth is just fumbling over these words. So in the rendering tab, we could add in more lights. So maybe I'm just adding in an area light really quick. I'm not going to explain it in this video. I'll explain it in the next one. So if I press 7 on the keyboard, it turns on light visibility. And maybe for this one, I want to give a rim light to, hey, come on, move forward, to the back sphere. 10 and 5. All right. So at this point, I've already clicked keep image, so I've got this video saved. Not this video, this render saved. Now, rendering again. Okay, that light has done nothing. So I need to increase the exposure and everything again. So 15 and maybe 15. So this is trial and error at this point. There we go. So now, looking at the whole scene, I could use other lights. I could use area lights to supplement the HDRI map to get a greater control over the final image. Okay, so HDRI maps really handy for setting up an entire environment. So if you're doing an exterior scene, starting with a HDRI map is brilliant. Or if you've got light coming through a window, you could start with this as getting kind of the scene lit to some extent.